The views and opinions expressed on Lifeguards Off Duty are those of its hosts and guests exclusively. They do not represent any entity, organization, or municipality.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Michael Katchmar.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Sean.
And this is Lifeguards Off Duty with Dr. Michael Katchmar, the Jersey Shore #1 lifeguard-themed video podcast.
Watch us on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook Live. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever streaming service you prefer.
If you would like to contact us, send an email to drkatchmar@icloud.com. Follow us on Instagram at lg.association.
All right, let's get started.
Let's start the show.
Let's do it.
There it is.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Michael Katchmar. This is Lifeguards Off Duty with Dr. Michael Katchmar. Today's date is February 8th, the year of our Lord, 2022. We have Tyler today. We don't have
everybody.
Hey, Tyler. We don't have Sean today.
Sean's the Friday guy now. We're going to start doing Friday shows.
Yeah. But we have a very special guest, and his name is John Moore. He's not only an accomplished attorney, but he's a lifeguard. I don't say former lifeguard or lifeguard. See, like John, like I'm a physician, but when people ask me what I am, I'm a lifeguard, either a former lifeguard or lifeguard. So
Yeah.
So I don't know how to articulate what you really are, but I think we all have sand in our toes. So
yeah, that's a good one.
You want to show?
Let's just read a little bit off of this real quick to introduce you, John, and then we'll have you introduce yourself here.
So we have for people on the podcast, they can't see it. So you want to go to our YouTube video. We have John's resume up.
Yep, and I'm gonna read some of these off for us real quick. Former and longtime Jersey Shore Ocean lifeguard, co-founder, commander, and executive board chairman of the Answer Team, which is one of the largest volunteer water rescue response teams in New Jersey. National legal consultant and advisor for the United States Life-Saving Association, the premier open water certification agency for the country. That's definitely the thing on your resume that we have you in here for sure. Legal consultant for the USLA Mid-Atlantic region, New Jersey certified emergency medical technician and volunteer EMS responder, 40 plus years there. Wow, that's impressive. Instructor and consultant for ocean rescue and submerged victim response and search, and the list just keeps going. So John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think the resume sums it up. Happily married for 31 years, and I'm talking to you from our new home in Florida. So I couldn't
Yay. Yay. Well, John, I just want to say one thing is that it's an honor to have you on. I was excited about this for a long time, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. So
my pleasure, Mike, and call me Chip. Most people in the lifeguard world know me as Chip.
Chip. All right, Chip.
Before we get into all the call it the nitty-gritty, all the real technical stuff we're going to be talking about today, I'm definitely interested in your lifeguarding career. When did you start? Where'd you work?
Well, I'm going to show my age here, but I lifeguard for a total of 7 years in Avon by the Sea, 5 full-time, 2 part-time. Avon by the Sea is a lovely town in Monmouth County, New Jersey. A lot of people on the podcast probably know it well. And I did that in my late high school, early college years. And then, like so many lifeguards, I transitioned into the work world. And then I came back to it in the early 90s when I actually moved back into Avon for several years and became a volunteer down at the beachfront. And it was during that time we formed the Answer Team, the water rescue team, which I'm still involved in at the executive level. I've stepped down from operations, but it grew, and I can't take the credit for this. It grew from a 6-man team to over a 200-man team that covers 5 towns, and is a hybrid of police, fire, EMS, water rescue, including rescue swimmers and divers, as well as emergency management, traffic communications, boat crews, and we work hand in hand with the Coast Guard and the New Jersey State Marine Police. So I'm proud of what the team has accomplished for that. And I'm a longtime member. I won't say over 40 years, but it is, of the Avon by the Sea First Aid and Safety Squad, working in EMS as a volunteer.
That's amazing. Now, when you were in law school, and I'm assuming you were lifeguarding a little bit during the time, at least for your undergrad, was it always a goal of yours to use a law degree to get onto the administrative side of lifeguarding?
Well, I always had a passion for public safety, and I wanted to make a career out of it. Unfortunately, I got hurt. And after that, I realized that career wasn't going to really happen for me. So to my mother's delight, I went to law school. But when I came out of law school, I went into Philadelphia, practiced law. And because of my volunteer background, public agency defense work became something I just was drawn to. So I love defending school districts and police departments, things of that nature. So I became ingrained in the law enforcement world from a legal perspective, and in the first responder world, whether it was ocean rescue, EMS, fire. And I left the practice of law after 18 years and formed my own company called Response Law. And the rest is history. I've been providing legal training and consulting on all forms of public risk around the country since that time.
Wow.
Sounds like we have a good ally in you, Chip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you pay me enough, yes. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Can't forget that. Well, it's amazing to have you here. Let's get into it.
So we have a whiteboard here. We wrote a couple things down, but do you have his well, Chip, why don't you just start? We'll wherever you want to lead it to. So we're all ears. We want to learn. So tell us what you
Well, I want to start with what I think is going to be, I can't promise it, potentially very good news. I've been working with a gentleman by the name of Matt Giacchetti from Life Force One in New Jersey, who really started the ball rolling on this. We are working hard, hand in hand, with Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey to have lifeguards nationally recognized as emergency response providers. And if you haven't heard that term before, it's the official federal law term for first responder. First responder is sort of a colloquialism, sort of a slang version of it. And we want that for lifeguards because they are emergency response providers, so that they get the benefits, they get the priority for vaccinations, they get everything they're entitled to. And the reason I'm opening with that is too many lifeguard agencies I deal with who are dedicated, well-trained, couldn't have any better, have not really gotten into the mindset that they are part of the emergency management system, and that they need to be, and that they deserve to be, because it gives you legal protection.
Do you think that adding that label to what we do you think that will attract a much more professional and serious type of person that wants to get the job?
Well, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, so I'm going to be respectfully blunt. The problem with lifeguard shortage is money. It's salary. It's hourly wages. And a lot of lifeguards out there risk their lives across the country every day, make less than the people who are checking people's badges to get onto the beach. And my hope, my prayer is that if we get this federal recognition, it's going to ramp up the need to be focused on that lifeguards need to be paid more, whether they're seasonal or year round.
John, let me ask you something about first responder. And that's the term we're using, first responder.
Yes.
So first responder is who would designate that? No, first of all, you have state and you have federal. Are there any states that designate us now as first responders?
Officially on record by statute, not that I'm aware of. There could be.
Now,
go ahead.
With the federal government, what agency, who would be the one? Where would that come down from? Would that be under the Secretary of Health? I mean, who in the federal government who does that now? Who designates who a first responder is?
Well,
Is
here's the funny part. It's already been done. Federal law passed by Congress, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on statutes. If people want those references, I will give them to you. But federal law does not define a emergency responder, or let's use the term first responder tonight, does not define the term of first responder by a list. Well, it's police, fire, and EMS, and you need to get on the list. Oh, let's put emergency management on the list. It doesn't work that way. Federal law defines first responder, which they call emergency response providers, by the nature of your duties. And when you go down the description of duties under federal law as to what constitutes a first responder, lifeguards for decades have met that criteria. So the good news is we're not asking for new legislation, a massive bipartisan vote. We're just asking for a resolution from Congress to say and clarify what already exists, that lifeguards meet that criteria. And a lot of states and counties and lifeguard agencies need that resolution to hold in front of their boss to say, we're part of the pack.
Okay.
Now,
that's clear.
I just want to rewind just a little bit to the reason that this conversation has come up recently. And I wanted to ask you how much it has to do with the incidents that happened this summer, the two in New Jersey, particularly, where we lost 2 lifeguards.
Sure. And I understand and respect the question. The fact of the matter is that this pursuit for recognition for lifeguards as first responders at the federal level did in fact start before those incidents occurred, months and months before those incidents occurred. But in all honesty, those incidents brought to the front burner, like all incidents do. We're an incident-driven country. We get more done post-incident than we do pre-incident. And
It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, those incidents certainly put it to the front burner, especially in the category of line of duty death benefits.
Okay, so let's dovetail into that. So can we? You want to start talking about these these categories, because we discussed this before the show. There's several categories that I especially when you're talking about civil and criminal. But I like, again, I'd leave it up to you. You could go down whatever way you want to handle it. But those are the things that I'm very interested in right now.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
No. Just no. My point. No, I'm just that I just was going to say the topics that we wanted to talk about that we talked about before the show were these incidents, clearing the beach.
Okay.
And then also vehicles, and also the boat and everything. So I mean I know you had it prepared. So if you have something that you want to present, so.
Sure.
We'll keep our mouths shut and we'll listen to you.
Sorry, I misunderstood you. So let's start with clearing the beach. And of course, that was highlighted by the incident in South Jersey, at least at a Jersey perspective, probably a national perspective, is clearing the beach and evacuating a beachfront, whether you got 100 people on your beach or 25,000. Some questions can be answered at a national level, and then states kind of do their own things. But it goes back to the point I made before, because many lifeguard chiefs have asked me, well, suppose we have a plan in place and we have a warning system, and we give 1 warning, we give 2 warnings, and on the 3rd warning, we're out of there because we want to come back to the job. We want to go home at the end of the day, and these people aren't listening. So can we leave the beach? And if you treat that issue in a vacuum like that, you're going to have a liability problem. And it goes back to this point. Clearing a public domain, which is a beachfront, and I can deal with private domains later, but clearing a public domain, which is a municipal city beachfront, doesn't matter.
Right.
it is an emergency management incident command area of responsibility, which is why I push all the time that lifeguards are within that chain of command. And I know I've sat down with dozens of lifeguard agencies and I told them the same thing in the first 5 minutes. Where's your police department? Do you have a relationship with the chief? Are you part of the incident command system? Has the police department drawn up an evacuation plan for public areas, including the beachfront? Because at the end of the day, the police department's in charge, not the lifeguards. So we're not dumping it off on the police. They accept this responsibility. They do it well. And if you have that incident command system developed and that plan in place, if officers aren't on the beachfront at the first warning, they're going to be there as part of the plan. And when you get to that third warning and you've got people who are not going off the beach, it's a law enforcement issue and it's their decision. Here's what's happened though, and it's just human nature. I'm not faulting anyone. What happens is lifeguards agencies may not have that plan or asked for the plan and didn't get it. It may not be their fault. Suddenly you've got people on the beach. You've got the South Jersey incident on your mind. You're saying, holy sugar, I got to get these people off the beach. And you're calling in a panic for police response. And it's not part of the plan. That's where the confusion and the miscommunication and the lack of organization opens the door for a lawyer to claim negligence. And I'll say this now, I've said it my whole life. Lawyers don't sue you, an agency, a municipality, because they want to win it in court. They want to go to trial. They sue to settle. That's what they want. They want a case to settle. And their job, without criticizing lawyers, is to show the confusion. And if I can show the confusion and I can show that there's miscommunication, lack of a plan, lack of coordination, nothing was practiced or drilled, I've got enough to make a settlement. And lifeguards who sit on a lifeguard stand, I hope they're listening tonight, say, well, that's got nothing to do with me. You know, there's insurance coverage and municipalities involved. And, you know, why do I have to worry about that? Because these lawsuits are personal now. They're personal. Insurance companies immediately look to a situation and say, do we owe this lifeguard coverage? Or did they violate their scope of duty? So the message tonight is personal. It's to lifeguards. It's not to their agencies. It's not to the town. It's you're going to get dragged through the mud. You could lose your job. You may not get coverage. And even if you survive all of that, I've seen too many lifeguards, cops, firefighters come back to the job after the case was successfully defended and they lost their desire to stay or to do the job correctly. So this is all personal. And that's key to beach evacuations, point number one.
Let me ask you, John. So I understand this, because this is really critical. This is one of the biggest things. And I'll give you a breakdown. We understand when lightning's coming. We have ways to monitor whether or not a storm's coming. We have apps we have TV screens, and we have our phones, and we have some radar lightning detectors. And so let's just say we're going to clear the beach, and we have people in the water and we have people on the beach, and we could have up to 10,000, some beaches less. But I want to make sure we understand each other. So we get the lifeguards, we get everybody out of the water. Hopefully we have enough time. Lightning's coming. We have enough time before the storm hits to get everybody out of the water. Now, at that point, you're recommending, you're saying the police should be then on the beach. The lifeguards get off the beach, and the police take over the evacuation of the beach. Am I correct on that? Is that how the ideal scenario should be?
No, it's not that strict. What happens is the police need to be part of the plan, and they are the overall in charge. They're the incident commander. Can the lifeguards work with them to clear the beach? Yes. It's not lifeguards gone, police in. That may happen, but that's a police decision. The police may very well ask the lifeguards to assist them in clearing the beach.
Right. Because that's an important point, because the way I envision it is we get the police down with vehicles, and most likely we should be in trucks and not ATVs or mules, because I don't know if they're appropriate. But let's just say we're all in closed trucks, and the police come down and we're there and we do it jointly, because in some of the towns, I know that the police are not allowed to go in the water. They got to do all their equipment. They may not be trained for it. So if somebody does sneak in, the police are not going to shoot them. They want to run in the water.
Right.
So what you're going to do is we're going to be there. And if I'm in the truck and some people go in the water, I'm gonna go after them. Especially if they start getting in trouble. So I think it needs to be collaborative. A collaboration between the two. But you're making an important point here. At that time, it should not be a lifeguard operation. It should be the police operation from your perspective, and then the lifeguards are following the police direction. Is that what you're telling us? Is that from your perspective how it should fly?
At the end of the day, the police are in charge. They're the incident commander. Okay. But let's back up a little bit here because now we've gotten into this. Mm-hmm. All of what we just talked about should already be on the municipality's Facebook page, on their website, on their signs, in their policies and procedures.
Because John, how many beaches are missing out on that type of stuff? Sorry to cut you off there, but
I don't have a number, but more than there should be. Just because, not because of negligence, just because of lack of information about connecting the dots, because every court in every state, I don't care what state you're in, as a lifeguard agency, there's a legal duty to warn, but the legal duty to warn doesn't start with the first warning on the beach that the storm's 20 miles out. It doesn't start with that. It starts with, you come to our town, check our website, read our signs, look at what we have posted. If we have a public forum, attend it. Look at our Facebook page, and that's all going to be there. And the most important part of the duty to warn, and I've lived it, I'm not trying to brag about it, but there's a point where conditions get so bad that first responders, including lifeguards, aren't coming. Mm-hmm. We're done. And we've warned you. We try to prevent you. Yes, our hearts and our minds saying we're going to go to get you, but that duty stops. The legal duty stops. The emotional duty may carry into the water, but the legal duty stops. But people have to know that. People have to be, every state calls it legal notice. Did you put the public on legal notice? And that's probably the biggest piece of the pie that's missing right now, Mike.
Wow. So there's a legal block here that first thing should be, there should be a whole set of circumstances where people are warned beforehand. Yes. Okay. Now let me just dissect this one little bit, because you have two things here when you talk about liability. So you have the God bless you. You have the people who are clearing the beach. So you have the liability on the police and us to protect the people in the water and on the beach.
Yes.
And that's one thing. But then the other thing is, as a supervisor, I'm a supervisor. What's my responsibility, or the chiefs and the captain's responsibility for our workers, for our lifeguards, as far as clearing and getting them off the beach? It's so because that's also what we're all agonizing over too. How?
Well, let me give you 3 words that I tell every lifeguard supervisor to put into their plan, and I separate plans into 2 categories. And I don't want to digress on this. We can talk about this more later. But there's right. SOPs, which is standard operating procedures.
Right.
And the 3 words under SOPs are must, will, and shall. You must report to work. You must wear your uniform. You must pass the swim test. Whatever that is, those things that they absolutely must do. The other category, which really, really assists a supervisor to answer your question, is SOGs, which is suggested operating goals or guidelines. And in the guidelines, you never use must, will, and shall, because if you use those words, they're words of promise, and you've made a contract. And the courts view it as law. You've made your own law. Under suggested operating guidelines, it's may, discretion, and safety. So let me give you an analogy.
Yes.
The fire chief at the structure fire may at his or her discretion for the safety of their firefighters, blow those air horns 3 times and tell the firefighters, get out of the structure. The roof's going to collapse, even though you're still doing an interior search, primary search, trying to find a victim. It's time to get out. And that's the same standard for a lifeguard supervisor. You're not going in, or it's time to get out.
So now these guidelines, essentially, are they how the USLA deals with the fact that so many beaches have like vastly different situations and potential situations for how they're going to deal with their day?
Yeah, that's the beauty of the USLA, and I'm so proud to be a member of it. It's a best bunch of folks I've ever worked with. And their open water life-saving manual is really a template for people to customize to their specific operation. They give you baseline guidelines to say, if you're going to do this, these are the things you need to think about. These are the things that we've already learned. These are what we call best practices. We're not mandating them. We're not telling you it's the only thing that's going to work. But from lifeguard agencies all over the country, with all their experience and knowledge, we're sharing it with you. You customize it to your agency. Getting certified is another whole game and another whole story, being certified as a USLA agency. But the purpose of the book is not only to help you get certified, it's to educate your agency on here's what we consider the best practices for you to follow.
Right, John. You got to. I apologize. I'm a physician, so I'm not. I have a hard time with the laws sometimes. So, but this is intriguing to me. So, just give me that analogy that you gave. So where it's law, and so as a supervisor or a captain or a chief.
Yes.
With regard to the lifeguards getting off the beach and getting safety. So how do you put this in a written structure or protocol? What would be the best scenario going forward?
Well,
you see what I'm saying? Yeah,
the guidelines is that I'm just paraphrasing. There's a lot more to this than what I'm telling you tonight. But
right.
I'm paraphrasing it, but the supervisor, that language in there must give the supervisor the options, the room, the tactical flexibility, the discretion to say, based upon conditions, based upon the position of my personnel, based upon the forecast, I may, at my discretion for the safety of my lifeguards, make a decision to either keep them on the beach, allow them to go in the water, or pull them off the beach. And it's got to be general. It's got to be flexible, because storms are like rip currents. They can change status in 2 seconds.
Now, the general and discretionary nature of these guidelines, does that lead to issues when it comes to legal issues? Like you end up in a courtroom and they're looking at these guidelines. Does that give a lawyer that's, say, attacking a lifeguard more room to work with, if you understand my question?
I understand your question, Tyler, and actually my experience is it gives them less. Because what happens with many first responder agencies, and I'm not just picking on lifeguards, police, fire, EMS, I've been involved with them all, lifeguard agencies, water rescue teams. The thing that agency have to be aware of is not to be trapped by paper. And what I mean by that is, if it's all in your SOPs, the lifeguard must respond. The lifeguard will enter the water. Analogy for you. After the Columbine school shooting so many years ago, law enforcement agencies across the country changed their SOPs to say, we must enter the building. We must engage the shooter. We will do this. We shall do that. And that was admirable. It was with the best of intentions. But too many agencies got trapped by paper and they realized that they were eliminating their tactical discretion, which officers are entitled to. The officer may,
okay.
his or her discretion. You have to have that
Gotcha.
discretion because no one has a duty to die. No one has a duty to get hurt. The legal duty across the country, New Jersey included, is I have a duty to make a good faith effort. And if risk of death or injury is in the way of that good faith effort, I have the option to stop, to contain, to retreat.
Now, what, if you could, would be an example of a situation a lifeguard could find themselves in where, you know, those guidelines aren't going to help them out? That a lawyer would be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely coming after you.
Well, it depends on the decisions made by the lifeguard and the actions taken that day. Were they working within the scope of their duty? Were they following the chain of command? Did they make a judgment call? And my experience is juries don't like it when lawyers attack good faith judgment calls, even though they ended up in tragedy. So here's the key words. A great question, Tyler. What was your intent when you left the stand? What was your intent when you called your guards off the beach? What was your intent not when you decided not to evacuate or you decided to evacuate? And if your intent was a good faith effort to protect, based on the information you had at that moment, all the hindsight in the world can attack your protection can attack the protection you have from a lawyer coming at you on the witness stand.
I think that's really great, because you do see a lot of younger guards that kind of freeze up with the fear of that, you know, and to know that these guidelines are built to give us that ability to make these decisions in good faith. It's really good to know. I also wanted to ask you how these guidelines apply and where they differentiate when it comes to guards under the age of 18.
All right. I'm not sure how to answer that. In terms of guards, different states recognize age of majority at different levels. Okay. For criminal purposes in one state, the age of majority could be 16. For adulthood, it could be 18. For something else, it could be 21. But I think the best way to answer that question is to say, if the guard is perceived to be a minor under that state law where that guard works, they're perceived to be a minor, they qualify as a minor under state law, the duty on the municipality, on the county, and on the state is much higher. And I know that's a general answer, but it's hard unless you give me a specific scenario.
Yeah. So let me chime in because I thought that's something I wanted to get to because, you know, that's been a pet peeve of mine for a while. Is first of all, with regard to the liability, that was a great answer, and I understand it completely, and that was very clear, and I appreciate the clarity on that answer. I think that it leaves no doubt. I mean, I like the idea that you need to have the flexibility. The analogy of police officer going in, I could see how you don't want to be so locked in. With the age though, Tyler brought it up, and we've been talking about this on multiple shows. So you know, we can't run the beach patrol without having lifeguards 16, 17 years old. I don't know what I would imagine they're minors. I don't think they could, you know, sign a contract in the state of New Jersey. So from the municipality standpoint and supervisor standpoint, it will be equal. You know, if they have enough training, do we have to give them more leeway as far as letting them, or can they have the ability to make decisions on the stand, say, you know, to make a decision when to go for rescue, when not to go, or is their age have any impact on that? I don't mean whether or not they can physically do it. I mean, I got kids who are 16 years old, have been involved in lifeguarding for, you know, since they've been, you know, 13, 12 years old. So I guess it's from a legal standpoint, from a supervising standpoint, what can we let these kids do, and how much authority can we give them to interface with the public?
Well, let me break it down for you in terms of this. Courts and legislatures look at an age. Let's say, as in New Jersey, you can become an open water lifeguard at the age of 16, provided you go through the academy and you're trained. That's what I call a paper door they walk through. You've met the minimum age, you've met the minimum standards of training, you've passed the swim test. And by law on paper, because of your age, you're allowed to be on the beach. But from a liability standpoint, it ends there because their maturity is of a 16-year-old or younger. Their experience is zero. Their wherewithal for situational awareness and experience in responding or recognizing rescues is zero. They're still in a training mode. And they could be a top-notch skilled person, but they're still going to act like a 16-year-old. So, and I'm talking about anywhere in the country. So it behooves agencies, lifeguard agencies, to say, your paper training is done. Now your on-the-job training starts, which means they need to be supervised, they need to be coached, they need to be monitored, they need to be never on the stand alone, they need to be educated as to rescues, so at least they get that year or season under their belt so that supervisor can say they're progressing or they're not progressing. Can we take them to the next level? And this is a personal opinion, but it's based on legal experience. I would never give a 16-year-old decisional authority at the age of 16. I don't care if they were an Olympic swimmer.
That's interesting. Yeah. We get, and that's my thing, and there's, I can't treat a patient unless the parents are there if they're under 18, I mean,
Sure.
they can't consent for their surgery unless, of course, they're emancipated, if a girl had a baby, I mean, but it's interesting. She can't consent for herself, but she can consent for the baby.
I'm not going there, Mike.
So policy wise, is the USLA, especially the reason why we bring this up is because of the incident down in Cape May, the boat's one thing, but the age of I've heard some people saying, there was some concern about the age of the individual in the boat. And I don't want to speak specifically about, that incident necessarily, but I'm just, saying what from a supervisor and a town standpoint, how much can we let these kids do and should do? And, if they're skilled enough, can we let them in the boat? Can we let them on a board? Our kids are so great. I mean, they're good. I mean, we have one kid, Nicholas DeVoe. I mean, he made rescues when he was 14 years old, off beach. Right. So anyway, so what, from a policy standpoint, what's the USLA's policy on, minor lifeguards? Is there any policy that we could look to in the manual or
no,
direction?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the USLA recognizes the 16-year-old threshold, but they emphasize training, experience, and supervision. And I think here's the takeaway, because sadly, we're not going to be done with tragedies in lifeguard world. They're going to continue to happen somewhere, somehow. The key here, the takeaway from anything that happens out there that injures a lifeguard or, God forbid, takes their life is, and I hate to sound like a broken record, do you have a boat operations policy? Do you have boat training standards? Do you have boat equipment standards? Have you given your supervisor discretion to evaluate the age, experience, and training of those who operate the boat? If you have emergency lifeguard response vehicles, lifeguard emergency response vehicles on the beach, do they have lifeguard emergency vehicle operations training? Are they certified? Do you have the proper equipment on the truck? And is that in your policy? Is that in your plan? If you have an evacuation, do you have a policy? Do you have a plan? Have you separated your SOPs out from your SOGs? Because here's the bottom line. Anything can happen anywhere at any time. So that's why I don't judge events. I won't judge the event in South Jersey, Cape May, or anywhere, or in California. It wouldn't matter. What's key is, do you have policies in place that are designed to help you reduce the risk whenever possible? And that's the key. So that when somebody comes to you and says, well, so-and-so was out on the boat alone, so-and-so drove the truck on the beach, and so-and-so issued the evacuation order, you immediately want to go back to your policy and procedure and put it between you and those who challenge you. It's your protective legal vest. And you want to be able to say, here's our policy on training, here's our policy and standards on equipment, here's our policy on age and experience and discretion of the supervisor. And that, I think all of that is extremely, extremely important. And I'm going to say the obvious. It comes down to 3 words: training, training, training.
Training.
Too many first responders get initial training and they never get retrained.
The thing so I'm clear on this with the young kids, because some of the beach trolls have a big percentage of the beach troll are under 18 years of age. So
Right.
so when you talk about, so we could have a plan, and we could say May, or so again with regard to the how we structure the beach patrol, we should have a different protocol for people above 18 and below 18, or can we merge it all together? As for state, yeah, I'm
Well,
sorry. Okay.
this is where you're going to get trapped by paper, because and I know.
That's what I don't want to do. Right.
I'm not going to knock anybody else but myself. At the age of 18, me being a lifeguard, I think I probably had the maturity of a 15-year-old. So the fact that I was 18 did not turn me into super adult, Mr. Maturity. It's evaluation, and you can only use a general track. Are they acquiring the skills? And here's the big thing, and this: the 2 big faults of lifeguards as kids, and it's just because they're kids, is they get bored quickly. So teaching them to watch the water on the slowest day of the year is important to maintain that attention span, which is hard for a young kid, and the ability to listen and retain what an older lifeguard or supervisor is telling them. So all of that comes into the formula along with the numerical age. It's just not the numerical age. The age is a small piece of the pie as far as I'm concerned as they get older.
Right. So on that note, when we had Timmy Harmon here, he talked about the junior lifeguard program, and we have a very good junior lifeguard program. So if we had a 16-year-old who was involved in an incident, and the allegations are that, oh, he's too young, he didn't know what he was doing, and we're going to court, and I could show that this individual had 5, 6, 7 years of junior lifeguarding, and he's trained, and we could document it. I would imagine that would be very helpful for you, for the defense, as opposed
the more
to
training you have on paper, the easier it is for me to say to a judge or jury, they had the requisite experience or skills. And junior lifeguarding has a great value toward that. It's better for a 16-year-old lifeguard who meets the age threshold to have 3, 4, 5 years of junior lifeguarding under their belt, because they're going to be a lot quicker on the track than somebody who doesn't. But that doesn't mean you're going to let up on supervision, because everybody's different. Here's what happens. I was 16 years old. I grew up on the beachfront. I knew all about it. I knew all about the ocean. I was born and raised there. So at the age of 16, my attitude was, you can't tell me anything. I already know what I'm doing. And so you have to be careful. Knowledge is not enough. Does the training on paper help? Yes. But you got to measure and evaluate their maturity, their ability to listen, follow the chain of command, and watch the water.
Watch the water.
Chip, I want to
So-
back up just a couple minutes to when you were talking about the need and the lack of a lot of beach patrols having all these plans in place and ready to go. If the USLA were to walk into one of these beaches to one of these beach patrols and see that they don't have all the documentation that you're recommending that they do have, in what ways is the USLA or other certifying bodies for that matter, in what ways are they entitled to enforce discipline on a beach patrol?
USLA is not a regulatory agency. It's not a mandating agency, and it doesn't rely on inspections of beachfronts to certify. USLA certifies agencies. They don't certify lifeguards. They certify agencies on paper. In other words, a detailed documentation is submitted to the certification committee of the USLA. They review that certification packet to make sure it's complete, that it is, they're in compliance. And if it is, they will certify them as a quote unquote USLA agency. If a number of things can happen. If the USLA finds out on their own that the agency is not complying or that the information that they submitted is incorrect, they can give them a warning. They can give them a chance to correct. And if that's not done, can they revoke their certification with the USLA? The answer is yes. Can they do a spot inspection? If possible, yes. Not required. It can happen if an investigation especially is initiated. But we're not a disciplinary regulatory agency. What happens is that the certification could be suspended, giving the agency a chance to cure it, or if circumstances are warranted, they can revoke the certification.
I see. And
let me add to that. That doesn't play well in a court of law if you're the agency who got your certification revoked.
I see.
And something happened on your beachfront.
So if I'm the chief of, I don't know, let's say the Seaside Park Beach Patrol, where could I go? Who could I talk to? What kind of resources could I look up to ensure that I am following these guidelines to a T and I'm up to date with everything I need to know and I need to be doing?
Everything you need to know is on the USLA website. If you go to www.usla.org, every category, it's all there for everyone to see. Certification requirements, different certifications for evacuating beaches, like how to handle lightning strikes, what's the best practices, lifeguard vehicle operations, personal watercraft certification. It's endless. It's all there. And I would recommend as well that getting a copy of the USLA Open Water Life-Saving Manual and having it in your office is good. I mean, I help contribute to that manual and I still pick it up. It's at my fingertips in my office because I'm getting old. I can't remember everything.
No. So John, let me on that theme. So I want to understand this. The state of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey requires our beaches to be certified by one of several certifying agencies, but those agencies are not necessarily law enforcement. They could pull the plug if you don't meet the criteria, but they're not really looking all the time at it. So what about the other agencies? So it's not civil. I mean, they could pull your certification, but what about the health department or OSHA? Are there other agencies that have some rules or regulations, that are actually laws that we have to follow? I mean, I guess there's work laws for age and I guess maybe the environment where people work, they have to have certain breaks or something like that. So that'd be, health department. So where are the strict laws that we have to follow? Where would we find those? Or if somebody's listening, where would they look for that? Their county
I'll
health
give
department.
I'll give this to you in a nutshell, Mike, because the full answer would take about 3 days.
Right.
We have to turn this into a series.
Yeah.
We could do that.
First of all, at the federal level, the most important federal acts that lifeguard agencies, and it's not the lifeguard agency, it's the municipality that's in charge of that lifeguard agency, should adhere to, and they know it and they do it, is one, the Fair Labor Standards Act, which covers employment and covers age and all fair labor regulations, which includes lifeguards. At the federal level, the OSHA regulations for equipment standards and safety. In New Jersey, and I want to emphasize this, I am only talking about New Jersey, no other state right now, because I want to answer your question.
Right.
The New Jersey Department of Health, Title VIII, the bathing code, really sets forth the requirements for open water lifeguard agencies in the state. And I'm going to summarize it because there's an awful lot to it. They say two things. One, if you're going to be an open water lifeguard in New Jersey, you must meet the USLA standards. And your agency, you must meet the USLA standards, and you must demonstrate that you have a certificate from an agency or an organization that has certified that you've met the USLA standards. Number two, the Department of Health in the same title, Title VIII, says there are enumerated organizations listed in Appendix A who are authorized to certify you meeting the USLA standards, which means those organizations that are listed, if they are certifying beaches, should be certifying those agencies to the USLA standards.
And where is that now? That's under title. So if somebody wants to look up on state, so where do you go? You go to what?
It would be that it's New Jersey Department of Health.
It's under the health department. Okay.
Department of Health, State Bathing Code, Title VIII, and I believe I'm talking off the top of my head now. I'm taking a risk, but I think it's 8:26, which covers a lot of it.
Okay. And then is there also a county? County has a health department. Each county has a department of health. Some cities and towns within counties have departments of health. So if you're dealing with the Department of Health, you're dealing with a government regulatory agency. And when they come in, you have to be in compliance. So by example, a county Department of Health may not have any regulations regarding a swim test, but they'll come in and say, how far apart are your lifeguard stands? Are you meeting the state criteria? What's in your first aid kit? Where are your backboards located? Things of that nature. And if they're a regulatory agency at the county or state level, you have to be in compliance. Okay. So that's very clear. So one of the things that you had on again, on your email, we talked about it, and this is interesting to me. Where in lifeguard, and this is a general question, where is there civil liability as opposed to criminal liability? And I hate to even bring this up, but we need to talk about this. Where is there, from your perspective over the years that you've seen, where has been, we know in a pool, we've seen lifeguards, we did a show on that where they got indicted for, manslaughter because they were inattentive. Where is there some potential risk of criminal liability, and how can we mitigate that? And as opposed to also civil. I mean, civil, anybody could sue anybody, but I think the criminal one is the big thing.
Well, let's start with civil first, because that's the world we live in. All right. The New Jersey Department of Health, Title VIII, the bathing code, all bathing codes, all state statutes in any state which cover beachfront operations, I don't care what your agency is or what your state is, all falls under civil law, not criminal law. It all falls under civil law.
Civil. Okay.
Civil law. And civil law sets forth the standard that if you violate a civil statute, you can be liable automatically. You can be responsible for damages. You can be subject to civil internal discipline depending upon the protocols and rules of your agency or state law. But that's civil.
Can you give an example of a deviation where that would happen? Like what would be, I mean, can you general?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not hard. In most cases, that where let's say there's a drowning, okay, and it's an on-duty drowning, and they evaluate it and they make a determination. The lawyer representing the victim's family, makes a determination that they believe there was negligence on the part of the lifeguard operation, and they sue in civil court because you were negligent, meaning, without going into a law class tutorial, meaning that they failed to meet the reasonable person standard. They weren't watching the water. They were listening. They were on their cell phone. They left the lifeguard stand. That's all civil because you were negligent. You made a mistake. You didn't meet the standard of care, meaning you didn't do what a reasonable person would do with your training, your qualifications. You didn't meet your duty. You weren't vigilant. That's civil damages, okay? If you rise above the level of negligence where what you did was willful, was wanton, was so reckless as to shock the conscience of the court, as they say, then you could be, and it's rare, and I'm glad it is rare, you could be subject to a violation of a criminal statute, meaning you acted with malice, you acted with the intent to harm, and you reckless disregard for the life of another can lead to criminal negligence and in some severe cases, manslaughter.
So any, can you give me an example of that? Or have you seen one? They're rare, thank God. Because I thought, if negligence, if you were proven, like say, I don't know, you were, on a cell phone or something, that doesn't rise to criminal then. So I didn't know that. I thought, so that's just civil. And,
No.
but what would be an example? What would be an example of criminal?
In civil law, it's negligence and gross negligence. You can make a small mistake, you can make a big mistake. It still falls under civil law because it was a mistake. It was a good faith effort, but you made a mistake. In criminal law, let me give you a simple one. I'm a lifeguard. I'm on the stand all day. I've been dealing with jerks all day who won't listen to me. It's hot. I'm tired. I want to go home. I'm on the stand and someone's headed to the water into a bathing area with a surfboard. And I blow the whistle and I say to him, you can't go in here. It's swimming only, no surfboards. He says, F you, I'm going in. I jump down off the stand and clock him. I hit him. That's criminal. That's intentional assault with no excuse. I'm not defending myself. That's assault and battery.
I see. So that'd be criminal.
Yes,
okay.
Because my intent was to harm.
Yeah.
Right.
My intent was to harm.
Right.
Before we go forward, Mike, because I wanted to make this point, that's why lifeguard agencies, and I do this when I do trainings all over the country. Right. I tell police officers, firefighters, lifeguards, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be a Navy SEAL. It doesn't matter. The system tells you to document results. Did you make a successful rescue? Did the patient live? Did you make an arrest? Were they found guilty? Did you save them from the fire? Those are results. What we need first responders, particularly lifeguards, to do is document attempts, which, by the way, is part of a lifeguard's reporting system now, is how many attempts you made. And they call it what? Preventive actions. They call it preventive actions, however you want to say it. And in liability world, in civil law, if I can document that I'm making good faith attempts, even though the result was bad, I'm protected. But I've got to document that attempt.
John, let me expand on this thing about assault because it's an interesting concept. we have people who get real close to us in our space, right, and point their fingers, curse at us, call us different names. And we all understand, we're not going to hit anybody, but it's intimidating, and we'll call the police and try to deal with it. But there's two scenarios. One is what happens if the individual just starts, grabbing you, punching you, hitting you. Do you have the right at that point to defend yourself, or do you, because then I don't want to assault anybody. I know it's a tough question to answer, but then the other thing too is that, we have people who are in a run and they're going backwards. I've seen this on different beach trolls, and I've been asked about this, and they don't know they're in trouble, Chip. They don't know they're in trouble. They're going backwards though, but we know they're in trouble, and we go to rescue them. And we get them out there, and they don't want to come in, or we bring them in, and they're like, what are you touching me for? Why'd you bring me in? And I'm wondering, are we going to get an assault charge because of that? And it sounds kind of crazy, but I'm seeing more and more of it. People, have that kind of perception. So there's two scenarios. Somebody gets violent, physical. What's our recourse? I mean, that's, we could run away, but is there, if we do try to defend ourselves or protect ourselves, is that considered an assault? And what about, rescuing somebody, in their mind, maybe they didn't need to be rescued, and you're touching them, you're bringing them in. So, those are two things that if you could.
Okay. So let's deal with scenario number one, which is much different than scenario number two.
Yeah.
Scenario number one, somebody attempts to harm you. You have every legal right in the world to defend yourself. If you have the option to evade, that may not be an option for you, but you have every legal civil right to defend yourself from somebody who's trying to harm you. And if you're meeting their force with equal force, then you're fine in terms of doing that. Okay. And that's why, and I hate to get off on a liability thing, that comes down to witnesses. You want to make sure you document what other lifeguards were there, or police officers were there, or people who saw what happened. But you have every right to defend yourself. Are they going to charge you with assault? I'm sure they will. But is it defensible? Yes, it's completely defensible if you were defending yourself and you were not acting as the aggressor. All right. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is much different. And if I'm going into the water as a lifeguard and I'm going to rescue somebody because I think they need to be rescued, I'm the one with the knowledge, the experience, the training, and the physical skills to know whether or not they are or are not in trouble. So why am I going into the water? What's my intent? Well, my intent's not to protect myself or defend myself. My intent is to save them, to reduce harm to them, to keep them alive. And I guess I'll put it this way. I would much rather defend a lifeguard going into the water and getting a victim in, even though they may be resisting, without trying to harm them, but making a good faith attempt to have them hold on to the torp or get them in, then defend a lifeguard who gets 5 feet from in the water and says, screw you, you're not worth it, and turns around and goes back in. And I say this to my training audiences all the time. Don't worry about the fact that you might get sued. The fact that you might get sued is no longer a concern. And the reason it's no longer a concern is because it's guaranteed you're going to get sued,
Right.
no matter what you do.
It's
guaranteed. So get sued for doing the right thing.
So if a scenario is, I get called down, I'm a supervisor, I get called down as an individual who is obviously impaired, and we'll leave it at that. And they're going in the water. It's a bad ocean. Maybe it's red flag, double red flag. And they basically said, I'm going in. And, they start going in, and I guess, I mean, I don't want to wait until they drown. But in that scenario, we're going to try to have to get him out, and he's probably going to be very, argumentative and start assaulting. So in that scenario, I think that, I'm going to try to save the guy despite himself. You don't know what his mental capacity is. So, but in a scenario like that, you're saying that that's defensible. That's what we should be. I don't say.
It's
I don't want to make you say
defensible,
we
and,
should be doing that, but
you know,
our own discretion.
every question you bring up reminds me of a case I have or had, and I, as a lawyer lifeguard, because I know in hindsight I can give the perfect answer. But if I have somebody who I think is under the influence of drugs or alcohol and they're entering the water and they're disobeying my commands, if I'm not getting on the radio because I'm getting off the stand to get them, someone else on that stand should be on the radio notifying law enforcement already of what you have, so that process is in place, not just from a tactical backup standpoint, but from a legal standpoint. You recognize there was a legal issue here.
John, have you ever had a scenario where, some beach patrol have like an individual, they swim out and it's not that bad water. I mean, but they're out there and they don't want to come in, and there may be, I don't know, 300 yards out. And this is a little bit just on the side, but in a situation like that, I would, we'd probably call the police down. We'd go out and try to talk to him, see what his situation or her situation is, and be very nice to him and ask him if they need assistance. But from a liability standpoint, if there's like, I'm fine, I don't want to come in, and we say okay, and we go in and we just tell the police that that's not what we want. We can't watch them all the time. We have to watch everything else.
Mm-hmm.
How do you where does that play into things? I mean, do we have the right to drag him in or her and throw him in a boat, by the hair, or we just got to let him out there and try to, make sure, try to keep an eye on him as best we can?
The specifics, and I'm not trying to evade the question.
No, it's a tough. I know.
The specifics of how that's handled is going to change with every jurisdiction in the country. How that's handled. Having said that, the key question, if I'm standing in my jurisdiction on my beach, my legal question to myself is, what are my protocols for this, and what options do I have? And have I exercised all those options? So if I have the option of calling the police and getting them down there and making a report and having the officer see it, I'm going to exercise that option. We usually have that. If I have the option of getting a guard out there on a PWC or on a boat or on a rescue board or on a kayak to talk to the person, I'm going to exercise that option. If I have the option of calling in the Coast Guard, and they'll stop by and talk to the guy or try to get him in, or the State Marine Police. Whatever options I have available on my protocols, the key is that I exercise all of them. And when I'm out of options and I can't get them in, I'm protected. I
got you. So the toolbox, it's important to have the toolbox.
You got to have the toolbox. And I got to tell you, juries especially don't like it when they see first responders, excuse my French, working their ass off, trying to get somebody out of the water, and this person's just being a jerk and tying up assets and time. It doesn't go well for that.
You should ask my mom how she feels about that.
Yeah.
She gets real mad when she sees me go on a rescue. That's
well,
unnecessary.
I had one case. It was jet ski operators and flying in and out of the bathing area, not listening to the whistles, nothing. We sent the Coast Guard out. The Coast Guard brought them in. We pressed charges. It didn't go well for them in front of the judge in court.
Yeah.
So we exercised our options, but what options you have are going to change on your terms, depending on what.
Well, I like that. So in our plan, we should be thinking of all these things, which brings me to this other thing. In your experience, does most beach patrols have or should have a written risk management, like do a risk management evaluation every year? So like say, and sit down, say, okay, a swimmer who doesn't want to come in, or a lifeguard who's 16 years old, or basically a risk management protocol. Is that something that is encouraged, or is that too much paperwork? Like you're saying, you have things that are too.
Well, what you don't want to do is pigeonhole yourself. Right. What's our procedure for a 16-year-old? What's our procedure for a gun on the beach? What's our procedure for a 9mm versus an AR-15? You don't want to pigeonhole yourself. What you do want to do, and Tim Harmon, a longtime friend and colleague, he's great at doing this, is not only to have a flexible tactical response plan that would cover any potential emergency, but to incorporate it in the town's overall emergency management plan. So that not just the lifeguard supervisor, but the police chief and the emergency management coordinator and the business administrator know what your plan is. But you don't have to try to figure out every possible scenario and create a plan for it, because you're going to miss one.
So,
For sure.
so John, what would a tactical, plan look like? 'Cause, a general. So, if from one of your beach, experience, because we're definitely going to get Tim back in here. But so, what would that look like? How would that,
Well, when I look at beachfront's plans, the first thing I look at is, what's your area of responsibility? Define it. What's your area of responsibility? Because that's often not defined. Many municipal agencies are doing extra beaches or a back bay or covering a state beach, and it's not in the area of responsibility. So what's your area of responsibility? Number two, define your mission. What is it you're there to do? And define that mission. Number three, what kind of qualifications are going to be required for people to carry out that mission? And not just qualifications, but what kind of training, initial training, short-term training, long-term training. Then I'm going to list my equipment, and then I'm going to get into my response protocols. And I'm sure you guys agree with me. And I just left the threat assessment conference here in Orlando, and the problem nationally is the problem in any town USA is the biggest part of your response plan is effective communications. What's your communications system? Radio, cell phone, text, apps, whatever you're using, have a plan where you have that interoperability with the town and responding agencies who are going to back you up. And that has to be part of the plan. And then chain of command. One of the big confusions in a major water rescue in any town USA is you've got 6 department heads on the beach all thinking they're in charge at the same time, and they're not. So you have to have, I think that's another huge part of it. You have to have the clear chain of command. Who's the incident commander? Who's calling the shots? Who's in charge? Who's not in charge? And because the last thing you want are people who think they're in charge and have no idea what they're doing. And that's where plans get attacked by lawyers.
Now, a lot of what we talked about boils down to this communication, readiness, and organization, all the way from, as you said, the individual through the entire organization, through the township, county, state, all the way up to a national level. And a lot of that is a big kind of logistical project. So I wanted to ask you a question. It's kind of a bit of a gear switch, but we're running out of time. I know you have another video conference, and I actually have to be at work in a few minutes, but you were involved in helping Cape May staff their beach after this boat incident, correct?
Yeah, I played a small role.
So what kind of logistical challenge was that, and how impressive was it to have, I think it was 56 guards showed up to staff the beach during that whatever few days or week that they needed it. So what kind of logistical challenge was that, and how impressive was it?
Well, first of all, it was unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I hope I don't have to send, but it was so impressive. I have said to my colleagues, it should be a model for mutual aid assistance everywhere. And all of the credit goes to not only the lifeguard captain in Cape May and their lieutenants, their underlings, but to Tim Harmon and to Mark Jameson from Ocean City, Tim Harmon from Seagirt, and a host of other people. And I apologize, I do not know all of your names, of a host of lifeguard chiefs from around the state who not only showed up to cover the day of the funeral, but South Jersey agencies who were there right after the incident to cover the days between the day of the incident and the funeral. The logistic coordination was military. It followed the incident command system to the max, and it took two components. One, people who were organized and experienced and knew how to put a mutual aid response together, and we had that in those people. And two was the relentless dedication of those lifeguards who showed up at work that day in Cape May, who really didn't care whether they got paid or not. So that was the bulk of it. What I did was on the legal side, and I credit the Atlantic County Joint Insurance Fund, the Monmouth County Joint Insurance Fund, the Ocean County Joint Insurance Fund. They came together along with the attorneys from the city of Cape May. So they took, let's put it this way, at the end of this long session tonight, they took all the legal hurdles out of the way to make this happen.
Good. Well,
That's amazing.
yeah.
And
Well, it's a far cry. I think a lot of, that's why we love shows like this. We're trying to tell people, we just don't sit there with sink on our nose and we're watching the waves. I mean, we have a lot of dedicated people, a lot of smart people, a lot of talented people, and hopefully we'll get the message out. Chip, I think, this has been great. I'm looking at you at the screen here. So I really appreciate, this has been unbelievable. So much information. I think that,
I'm going to have to listen to this again.
Yeah. We would love to get you back here again. If you could, we certainly would love to have you back. And, I think there's going to be a lot of questions that people are going to have. And maybe we could, we would love to have you back. So, and thank you very much. It's such an honor to hear from you. I learned so much from this.
Yeah.
And Tyler, you want to say anything to our guests?
Chip, do you have anything you want to bring attention to? An Instagram page, some kind of profile, any projects you're working on that you think people should know about?
No, but if you have questions or you're interested in the training we do, just go to responselaw.com. That's my company, or Google me. My actual name, not my lifeguard name, is John L. Moore. And it's what I do. But to be honest with you, it was a pleasure to be on tonight. Anything for the cause. And
Well, John, if you're in, we got one day we got to get you in studio. We usually have our guests sign the can.
I was gonna say that if you're ever up in Jersey, you got to stop by the studio and sign our lifeguard can.
I'll be back up in Jersey in May. So
all right,
I would love to sign the can.
So we'll do our second interview in person. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Follow us on Lifeguard or lg.association on Instagram. Dr. Catchmore at iCloud.com if you want to get in contact us. Shoot us an email. You guys can, if you want, there's a few ways to get in contact with us. Like I said, you could email Dr. Catchmore at iCloud.com. You can also DM us on lg.association if you want to come on, you want to do an interview, anything like that. Have any comments, problems with anything we're doing, just let us know. We're open-minded and we want the feedback. That's it. This has been Lifeguards Off Duty.
John, thank you very much. We're going to sign off.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
you. Chip.
We got one more thing we need from you.
Yeah, Chip. Yeah, you asked. We got one more thing to do. We at Seaside Heights, we have a whole thing that when we clear the beach, we say these beaches are officially closing for today. You got to stay out. And at the end, we say, stay out and stay alive. Stay out and stay alive. So if you could say that, we really appreciate it.
Will do. Stay out and stay alive.
All right. Hopefully one day we're so popular that we don't need to explain that to people.
No.
I'm easy.
All right, Chip.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We're going to sign off.
Take care, guys.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Send us out, Tyler.
Should we do the outro for the intro? The views and opinions expressed on Lifeguards Off Duty are those of its hosts and guests exclusively. They do not represent any entity, organization, or municipality.